And good morning, everyone, and welcome to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. My name is Alexi Boyd, your trusted host and small business advocate, bringing you yet another week of information, advice, tips, and some great networking meetings actually coming up in the next couple of weeks in the Hornsby-Ku-ring-gai area. You can check out for more information and previous podcasts the smallbizmatters.com.au website, which is available to all. You can download podcasts, get some educational materials, and also offer any suggestions you might like us to cover on the program in coming weeks. We've got some awesome guests coming up actually in the next few weeks. Let me just cover that off. We're going to do a Small Biz Journeys series, looking at some fantastic, well-known businesses in the Hornsby-Ku-ring-gai area and what their journeys were to become small businesses. And this is what I actually find quite fascinating. My regular listeners will know that whenever I interview someone, I open up the questioning with, so what brought you to this part of your life? What is your experience and your background in terms of your career that led you to start your own business? Because it's not often something that we step out of uni and automatically want to do, not unless we've really got that true entrepreneurial spirit. It can take a number of years and some life changes to make the decision to start your own business. And I find that journey fascinating. So I'm going to actually cover that off by talking to three prominent businesses, or not so well-known businesses as the case may be, in the Hornsby-Ku-ring-gai area, because I feel that those journeys are really something we can all learn from. We're all at different stages of our business. Some of us are just starting out. Some of us just have an idea that is blossoming, and others have been doing it for 10 years but not necessarily doing it the best way they possibly can. And the best way to learn is from other small businesses. The other way you can learn from other small businesses, of course, is by attending networking evenings, which we're a big advocate for here on Small Biz. There's quite a number of things coming up in the next couple of weeks, which I want to let you know about. So hang around on the show till after the break. We're going to talk about those networking meetings that are coming up. And it is a great chance not only to create business for yourself, but also to get your name out there, be seen as the local expert in your industry. It's not necessarily that the person you're speaking to is going to give you that business automatically, immediately in the next week. They could mention your name to someone else, or they could be having a conversation with someone who says, oh, yeah, I really need a pest guy. And they can go, oh, actually, I was just talking to someone. Why don't you check him out? So it's about being top of mind, and especially in the local areas, supporting one another's businesses. So if you're in that position and you can think of someone locally who can do it, and you might have happened to just meet them at the local Chamber of Commerce meeting perhaps, then why not recommend that person, or at least tell that person to check them out. So today on Small Biz, we're going to cover off a little bit more about what we were talking about last week, which was a really important topic of debt recovery. Now, we had Sean Kelleher in the office talking about this. It's his topic. It's his expertise as a solicitor. And he mentioned, talking about background, that he'd spent a great number of years in insurance companies, a giant insurance company, in fact, GIO, working for over 15 years for them in debt recovery. And interestingly, the processes of debt recovery are not much different from small business as they are for large. So a lot of the times when people talk about leaving corporate, they found it clunky, they found the processes difficult and didn't quite work. And that's why they chose to go into their business, because they felt that they could do it better for their clients than even big business can, which often we can as small businesses. It's what we're known for. But one of the things Sean mentioned was that he took away with him quite a number of processes that worked well, but can also be applied to small business. So we're just going to gloss over a couple of those really good tips that he gave us last week. And then I'm going to go to a website and talk about what some of the tips that they give specifically for small business, as well as Sean. So we talked about the debt recovery industry. Now, a lot of us, when we think about debt recovery, we think of a company called Dun & Bradstreet, D&B, hopefully not because you've received one of those letters from one of your suppliers, because you're not such a great client yourself, or hopefully there's not been an error made, but you often get those D&B letters. The most scary ones, of course, are when you get them where they're representing the tax office. And that in itself is quite interesting, that the tax office has outsourced debt recovery to other companies, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. So one of those things is that the industry varies greatly. You have got those sort of massive call centres in India where they send out the stock standard letters, they make phone calls on your behalf, they have a very specific procedure, and they only do debts, I think, that's over $2,000. And then, of course, the other option is to go to someone like Sean and talk about going to a solicitor specifically. Now, a lot of us, when we think about solicitors and legal fees in business, we think, oh, that's got to be one of the most expensive things. But if you don't go out there and ask, and you don't say to yourself, wow, it might only cost me $180 a flat fee, which is interestingly Sean and other local solicitors' way of doing things. Quite often, just getting that letter from a solicitor and not a threatening one, but one that outlines your rights as the vendor and the supplier's rights as well. Often that's enough of a kick up the pants to get people to move and get those debts resolved, or at least make the phone call. The other thing that Sean mentioned which is quite important, is that you have to have shown to try and collect the debt yourself. So there's no point in going all guns blazing, the Sicilian technique, as my local refinery cafe would say when I asked them, how do you deal with debt recovery? And Anthony said, it's the Sicilian way. You take out their kneecaps. Okay, great, Anthony. No, don't do that. I'm not an advocate for that. But you have to be shown to be trying to recover some of that debt yourself. And the ways that you can do that is obviously by emailing, by making phone calls, attempting to contact the person who owes you money, perhaps offering them a payment plan. And if you quite literally get no response, or they get cross and they start to question whether or not they owe you any money, that might be when you want to outsource to someone like Sean or another solicitor who specialises in debt recovery. And the reason you do that, of course, is because outsourcing is great, and we're a big advocate for small business outsourcing here, because you are not the specialist in debt recovery. You're not a lawyer. You don't know what the limitations are with regards to debt recovery. You don't know what the parameters are, what your rights are, what their rights are. You're not an expert in this field, so employ an expert. Don't try and wear all the hats all the time. So one of the things Sean said, to set yourself up to ensure that you don't end up in a position where you have to recover massive amounts of debts, is to make sure that you've got agreements in place. So if you do instigate a relationship with a client, you should have a client agreement in place. And you should also have written on your tax invoices what the terms are. Now, we had an interesting discussion last week about the fact that there is a push at the moment with the Small Business Council of Australia, I believe, to try and encourage legislation to go through to make it all invoices are a set due date of 14 days. Invoice date plus 14. Now, wouldn't that be amazing if you knew that everybody, including the big giants out there who like to stuff up small business by saying end of a month plus 2 months, wouldn't it be great if they all had to do it within 2 weeks? So that was a stipulated, everyone's, that's when the debt recovery process starts, after only 2 weeks. They've done it in France, they've done it in a couple of other European countries, and it has literally accelerated the economy. So this, for me, is a no-brainer. Julie and Lisa, if you are listening, how about you become the small business advocate? How about you push through this piece of legislation? Yes, it'll take a couple of years, but my God, how much would it speed things up for everyone? So have a think about that, and talking to your local politicians about pushing that sort of legislation through. It can't happen at a state level. It's no good if it's state. It has to be national, because we all need to be working from the same page when it comes to small business and debt recovery. So one of the things, as I mentioned before, that Sean suggested was to make sure you've got really good concrete payment terms on invoices. The same thing's written on your estimates and your quotes. It clearly states the interest costs, late payment fees, and indicate this to the client the first time you engage with them. So I, for one, as a bookkeeper with Boyd Office Management Services, proud supporters of Triple H, I have an engagement letter that my professional association has produced a template, and then I've tweaked it for each customer. If you have a professional association, they are a great starting point for getting an engagement letter. But there are tons of engagement letters out there which are legal, that you can go to the big legal firms. I think Legal Vision offers a free one on their website as well, and they are binding. They're not very complex, and they probably don't meet all of your needs. That's when you do need to instigate, talk to a legal team. But at least you've got something there, and it makes you look more professional. People forget that if you are a stickler for being paid, it doesn't make you look like an idiot. It makes you look really professional because you are valuing your time. You are valuing the amount of effort that you put into your work, and you're saying to your client, well, you have to value it too. And not only value it in terms of money, but value it in a timely manner. The work has been produced, the work has been delivered. This is the deadline for the payment to be received. And when you've got all that documentation in place and you've got everything written down in every form possible on estimates on your website, and it stipulates things like late payment fees and interest costs. What's interesting is that you look more professional, but also you're more likely to be able to get that debt back if it does end up going to court. So this is what Sean explained was the process. Number one, you should be engaging with your clients in a professional manner that shows them what your debt recovery process is, not in a form of saying, well, if you don't pay me, this is what's going to happen, but more that if late payment fees will arise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, talk to your professional organisation and get a template. Then you, in this situation where debt isn't being paid, you have to show that you've made an attempt yourself to recover the debt, and that usually, as much as possible, put it into writing. And let me just say, if you are making phone calls, you pull out a piece of paper after the phone call and you write down who you've called, that you've left a message, what was said in the message. So you've got a written form. That written document with a date on it, if you date it and timestamp it especially, is a legal document, as are emails, interestingly, and that was something Sean highlighted for us last week. I didn't realise that the courts have finally caught up, as Sean said, and they're now recognising that emails are now legal documents. And email trails are an indication of, in this situation, how you have made an attempt to recover the debt yourself. Another thing he suggested to try and avoid the process of debt recovery is actually considering offering discount terms for people who pay on time. Now, small businesses, that for me, even myself, makes me balk a little bit. But if it means that you're getting paid faster, is it really any different from offering credit card payment? So say, for example, if you're using an accounting software such as Xero, you can offer immediate credit card payment, and you could do that through Stripe or you could do it through PayPal. A pretty easy process, but the fees that you'll pay are quite hefty. So if you're looking at 3 or 4% fees, why not offer that discount to your clients for them to make a direct debit payment immediately into your bank account, and you're offering them the same discount? You would be losing that anyway if you were offering credit card payments. Just a thought. So once you've got to that process and you've done all the work yourself, you then engage with a legal team such as Sean's, who does debt recovery. You might want to go with Dun & Bradstreet if that process scares the bejesus out of people more because it's got the D&B name on it. And then hopefully after only a letter or two, then you've got to the point where the person is willing to pay, or at least put in a payment plan. So you need to be flexible as well. Now, if you've gone through all of this and you've offered payment plan, it's been turned down, and there's almost starting to be a question as to whether or not these people are going to pay you at all, then of course it does go to court. And there are rules and regulations about whether or not you can charge for court fees or court costs. And there's rules and regulations about what percentage of interest you can then charge on the debt. And that differs from state to state. So if you're not sure about that, then ring up Fair Trading. They can give you more details about what your rights are as well as what their rights are. You can't turn around and say, well, it's going to be 50% per day for each day that you're late after the 14-day invoice period. That's not going to work, and you're not allowed to do that. So make sure that you're clear on those regulations. Again, your professional association is a great point of call to get that information from too. So just remember your rights, but also remember their rights. And of course, another big issue that was raised by Sean was the consultants issue. And he would say that around 80% of his clients are graphic designers and people who are producing creatively. Therefore, it's very difficult to quantify what has been produced. If there's no evidence in writing about what was agreed upon, the cost, if you haven't got any of that in place, it's going to be nearly impossible for you to recover your debts. So if you have verbal conversations and they're long and they're detailed and they go into a lot of intricacies as to what you're going to be paid, when you're going to be paid, phase 1, phase 2, and you're in that creative industry, I would get onto your computer and write an email immediately after having that conversation saying, hi, just so that we're clear, I'm just going to pop this in writing. This is what we decided on the phone. Number 1, this is what will be paid. Number 2, 50% deposit. Number 3, 100% on completion of work. Number 4, this is the rates and any changes and how many sets of changes you will accept to the final thing. All those sort of things need to be put in writing. It's all very nice and collegiate to have a great conversation with your really fantastic client, where clients are really fantastic in the beginning, but when things turn sour and you've got nothing in writing to back up what you claim they owe you, you really don't have a leg to stand on. So it's really important. Now, as well as your local fabulous legal advisors, we have many legal firms here in Hornsby that can help you out. Another place you can get support is actually the Small Business Commissioner. Now, this is a New South Wales-based program. We've had Robin on the show previously. She's a small business advocate and commissioner for New South Wales, and they also run the BizConnect hubs around Sydney, which are not support groups, but kind of help businesses get themselves organised. They can actually take it out of court and offer a mediation process. And they have a huge success rate, as Sean mentioned earlier, because they make sure that both parties are aware of their rights. Because they're a mediator, they don't act on behalf of either party, so they can remain quite impartial. And when they're discussing the situation, they make sure that everybody's clear on what they can and can't do and what the expectations are. And he said that a lot of people walk away from that process actually not even losing that client because you've taken that process away from yourself. So it's a free service. You can check them out online. And of course, you can use fair trading as an option to get advice as well. But if it does get to the point where you feel it's going to go to court, but you want to avoid those court costs, then you can get in touch with Small Business Commissioner. Now, don't leave these things too late, because quite often it'll be months and months and months. These people haven't paid you. You've been patient. You're worried that they've gone out of business, that they have no money, that maybe you won't be able to recover any of the debt. Don't leave it so long. So if it's pretty clear that they're not engaged with you, not having a conversation, create a process where you say, right, I'm going to make contact with them via email 3 times. I'm going to make contact with them over the phone twice. And when I don't get any joy with that, straight away I'm just going to go to a firm that can send out a letter, or I'm going to send out a letter of demand myself. So make sure, and this is what we always say on the show, if you're going to create a process, then do it chronologically when you encounter that situation happening in your business. So if you do find that someone owes you money and you're going to go through the process of debt recovery, just grab a new Word document and just bullet point step by step. What am I doing now? What did I do first? What did I do second? And just keep on opening that document, adding new points to it, because you might not get the process right the first time, but at least you've shown what didn't work the first time and what can be tweaked. So that's a really great processes and procedures tip, if I do say so myself. You're listening to Small Biz Matters on Triple H. We're going to go to a quick community service announcement, then we're going to come back and have a few more tips about debt recovery from Smart Company, which is a great website that offers just another small business advocacy website, really. And we're going to talk about some great events that are coming up for small businesses in the next couple of weeks. You are listening to Triple H 100.1 FM. So just to cap off a couple more tips that have come to me via someone recommended a Smart Company website to check that out, and debt recoveries tips from the experts that do work. Train your customers. I like this one. Sit, boo-boo, sit, good dog. Woof. Make sure your customers know your payment terms from the start. This is what Sean was saying as well. Don't be afraid to drop a customer if they don't pay. And that's actually a really interesting point, because it's the non-payers who are often the difficult customers, who are often the ones who are less communicative, who are less organised. And honestly, if you're getting paid the same per hour for their work as you are for the people who pay you straight away, get back to you straight away and are very efficient and helpful, do you really need a customer like that? It's actually often a good indicator of a difficult client. And it's okay to fire clients. It's okay to resign. And it's okay to hand over to someone else, except you might want to pick and choose who you're going to give them to. Train your staff, making sure that if you do have staff or contractors, that they are aware of your payment terms as well and what your expectations are around debt recovery. You don't want someone who's in sales going off and selling a product and saying, you can pay us whenever, it doesn't matter, the boss is pretty casual and cool about that, when that's not your policy at all. So make it part of your induction and training procedure so that people who are selling your product are very, very aware and have the same hard line, which you should do, as you do with your products. And if they don't feel comfortable doing that, make sure that they feel comfortable enough to tell you that they don't feel comfortable doing that and that you can take over that role. Another great way to outsource these things is to use a local admin person or virtual assistant who can simply be the person who makes all the phone calls, and they can just be annoying. They could just be, not bordering on harassment, of course, but they can be that person who makes the phone calls, and it's one step removed from your business, and you can just say, oh, no, I just hired a firm to do that for me because I don't have time to do it. Not that you don't want to do it. I don't have time to do it. Understanding your customer's payment cycle. Now, this is a really interesting one. For those small businesses who work with large multinational businesses who are the biggest pain in the butt when it comes to actually paying, what's interesting is their business cycle. For example, if you're dealing with a large multinational, might be end of the month plus 2 months. So it's really important you understand their business cycle so you don't put your invoice date as the first of the month, because they're just going to say, well, end of the month plus 2 months. You're basically going to take 3 months to get paid. And this brings me back to my discussion earlier that we should all be pushing our local politicians, particularly at the federal level, to instigate a 2-week invoice time period nationwide. Wouldn't that be fabulous? Because then the big multinational companies can't get away with paying you in 90 days. So be aware of what their invoice cycle is and what your invoice date needs to be on your invoice. It's okay to backdate or forward date your invoice, but just bear in mind that some of those companies won't care about what your invoice date is. They will actually only accept the invoice date as the date it's received. So you've also got to make sure with those companies that the email that you sent is actually received at their end. So don't be afraid to put a, receive stamp on the email so you get a notification to say that it's hit their inbox and they've opened it. That's probably a good idea when it comes to your invoicing, particularly with a new client. So to make sure that you've got the correct email address as well. Just another tip. Now, following up regularly, you do need to be careful with what you're permitted to do with regards to following up. You can't literally sleep outside their door in a sleeping bag and say to them every time they come up to get their newspaper in the morning, give me my money. It doesn't work that way. There are parameters that you have to adhere to, so make sure you're conscious of those, and also be aware of what your industry standard is with your professional associations. Talk to other people in your industry, find out what their payment terms are, and also ask the professional association and see if there is it's sort of a stock standard period of time that everybody else puts on their invoices. It's no good you putting cash on delivery when everybody else is at 4 weeks, for example. So it can make it complicated, because if they're dealing with other suppliers who are similar to you, they might turn around and say, oh, well, so-and-so has a 4-week turnaround and you don't. So don't make things extra complex. So make sure you do that research as well. So just some more tips there from Smart Company. You can check out smartcompany.com.au to find out some great articles. Actually, they've always got really good information. And this one in particular came from Business Victoria, which I always use as a go-to for processes and procedures. The business.gov.au/Victoria, whatever it is an awesome website for templates and process documents as well. I've actually used a number of my process documents with helping businesses with office management stuff as part of Boyd Office Management Services, proud supporters of Triple H. Then they actually provide quite a few really fantastic and legal templates, which is awesome. If you'd like to see a topic covered on Small Biz Matters, you can get in touch via our Facebook page, Small Biz Matters Australia, and also, of course, check out the website smallbizmatters.com.au. You are listening to Triple H 100.1 FM. Thanks for joining me. I will see you next week, Tuesday. Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it.